Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now what I've got whizzing around in front of me today are Motostrelki, or the mechanized infantry of the Soviet Union. Now these guys were pretty much standard uniform from mid-50s or so, if I'm remembering correctly, all the way through to the late 80s and into the 90s. So with the fall of the Soviet Union, obviously there was a lot of these uniforms out there in the wild. Personally, I'm planning on using these guys for a little bit of alternate history style stuff, imaginations. But if you are looking to paint 28mm Soviets, you've got a skirmish-based World War III game or something that you want to do, these are so fast. As evidenced by the fact that I've done 3 of them in the space of time I'd normally take for one for a video, so you know it's going to be quick. Now all of the paints for this one will be listed in the description below, along with the basing recipe, nice and simple. Let's get started. So real quick up top, these fellas that I'm going to be painting today, they are from a Kickstarter from Flank March Miniatures. And you've seen their stuff on the channel before. Steffan has done the Cold War British, and as well as being STLs available for print, which I have done here, there are going to be white metal versions of them available too. So if you don't have a printer, you're not going to miss out. Now, Steffan did very kindly send me along the STLs for these, but I also backed the campaign because I want to unlock a whole bunch of those stretch goals. It's sailed past most of them. It's got a couple of days left. If you're watching this afterwards, go check out Flank March Miniatures anyway. I will make sure that there's a link in the description to where you can get the STLs and the white metal versions of these too. But wherever it is you're getting your miniatures from, first thing to do once they are assembled and based ready to go is to prime them. Now here I've used English Uniform Primer from Vallejo. It's pretty close. It's a little bit darker than the Soviet uniforms of the period, but it's just such a useful, generic army brown. You could also use leather brown, again the Vallejo one, or even the Army Painter leather brown. It's not going to matter too much. Now why does the primer not matter all that much? Because we're going to start by basically dousing the entire miniature in Khaki Grey for the uniform. Now here I've got a big old brush. It is not going to matter what you use. Just slather it fairly generously and make sure you're getting it over all of the uniform. Now Prairie Ochre from Army Painter is actually very similar to this if you can't get your hands on the Vallejo colors. As well, Talon Sand from Citadel is a little bit lighter and is not quite as green. But depending on where you guys, your little Soviets are being stationed, that might be appropriate for a slightly sun-bleached uniform. You'll see a little bit of the primer is still showing through, so once this first coat's dried, I'll give it a second over the top. As you can tell, it's not terribly taxing. Once the uniform color is sorted after a couple of coats of that, what I'm going to do is paint in his skin. Here I'm using Topaz Skin from the Army Painter, but there isn't really a right way to paint skin. Use whatever you like. Bugman's Glow or similar. Just a couple of coats of this. Make sure this is nice and solid before you carry on. Now, luckily, most of the equipment is the same sort of khaki canvas color. So you could use either khaki or canvas from Vallejo. What I'm using here is Tundra Taupe, and I think you'll see why. This covers just perfectly in one go. And yeah, all of his equipment with the exception of his webbing belts. And then for those leather straps, what I'm going to use is flat brown from Vallejo. Don't overthink this one too much. Any brown with a slightly reddish touch to it is going to work just fine. Now the helmet straps, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. You can paint them in with the same leather color, but more accurate would be something like this, which is Dusty Skull from the Army Painter. Just a light khaki. It is a fabric strap. It's a little bit light, but of course we're going to shade this, and I don't want to have to highlight it, so I'm going to use a lighter color to deal with that. Now with the exception of the boots, we've done most of the soft materials of the uniform. So what I've got is a raggedy, like the softest, most beat up old dry brush that I've got, and I've prepped this up with a little bit of dark sand. So what I'm going to do is start lightly dragging this along the edges of any detail. Across the back of the uniform is a good spot to have a look at this too, because you want to try not to fill in, like between the sleeves and what have you, but get just a little bit of texture to the uniform, because it's going to make it look a bit more realistic when we come to shade it. Now, it will surprise you. You can apply a little bit more of this than you might think, particularly if you get a spot where it catches just right. You know, don't be afraid to kind of overdo it a little bit, because you can come back with your base coats and tone things down a little if you have to, but I think this will be fine. Now we can move on to some of the other elements of the uniform and equipment. So anything that's going to be black, what I have here is German Grey. I've mentioned it a few times, just an off black I tend to find works better on our miniatures because it gives us a little that we can shade and still get some visual interest. The other bonus with German Grey is that it covers like nobody's business, so it is nice and quick. Single coat of this will do you for most anything. So his boots, his AK, this little part on his entrenching tool, now that would be metal too. So yeah, any bits that are going to be black, away we go. Then for painting in any wooden details, what I have is brown sand. And now beige brown will also work quite well for this, but I just like this. It's a little bit lighter than what I would usually use, but again, because we're going to shade it, and I want to avoid having to highlight it, starting from something lighter saves us a bit of time. So let's get the wooden furniture on the AK with this as well. I'm going to need to come back in with a little bit of that German Grey again to tidy up some of that, but no worries. What I'm going to move to now is orange-brown, and we're going to paint in those famous Baker-like covers on the magazines. This will require a couple of coats. Orange-brown is a little bit finicky, I tend to find. Now, sometimes as well, you'd see the bayonet covers done in this color too. I've also seen black plastic ones, and honestly, I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, while the first coat of that dries on these guys, I am going to quickly skip ahead, and I've got US Olive Drab here. This is going to be our painted green materials, so helmets and the head of the RPG. And we're really starting to come to the home stretch on the base coats here. What I have is flat red, and let's get him in, so I've got a slightly better angle at his collar tabs, and also shoulder boards as well with this. And then, last but not least, I have here some Retributor armor from Citadel. I'm going to go ahead and pop this over the top of their belt buckles. This is a nice gold color, but once we shade it, it's going to go a nice deep brassy color, so just perfect for these. Now once everything is dried and you've done any tidy up that you need to, it's time to shade them. Now what I'm going to use here is good old Sonic Tonic, or Marine Juice Mark, I think it's Mark 4 or 3 or 4 by now. This is a mix of a few different bits and pieces. This is a bottle each of Dark Tone from the Army Painter, Reichland Flesh Shade from Citadel, and Lahmian Medium from the same. It works out it's 3 parts each of the shades and then 4 parts of the Lahmian Medium, if you want to mix it up in smaller batches. The idea here is that this is a nice warm shade, which gives us plenty of depth, but it won't stain high points and flatter areas all that much. So you'll see as it settles, it very quickly runs into all the recesses. That is our extra medium in there doing its job. And we're going to go over the entire miniature. Don't need to make it complex here. Just bathe our whole dude in the old Sonic Tonic, and then we'll give him about half an hour to dry. See what we have after that. And there we go. Magic, right? What I'm going to do is highlight just a couple of things, mostly because I really like painting faces. So with some agate skin, I'm going to come in and paint over most of the face, leaving just a little bit of the shaded topaz skin in the recesses. And then with a little bit of barbarian flesh, we'll do noses, cheekbones, and chins. So let's get in there, little dots. Doesn't take much of this. Then the final thing to do here, if you fancy, is to grab a little bit of vermilion, or any lighter red, and I'm going to quickly just bop along the collar tabs to brighten those up just a little. Once I'm done with this, what I'm going to do is go ahead, take them outside, hit them with a matte varnish, and I will pop the bases on them too. I'll make sure the recipe for that one is in the description. And so, there at last, our little squad of Motostrelki is complete. Now these guys I think might actually be even faster than painting the 15mm troops I did for Team Yankee, because there's no highlighting except for the faces if you do want to go that route. What you could honestly do would be to just base coat the skin in a couple of layers of agate skin, use the mid-tone, and then use that dark sand dry brush to kind of do the highlighting for you. You could cut out a couple of steps, but I don't think there's many ways you could make this much quicker. For the result, anyway, I'm quite happy with that. Once everything was dried and done, I did come back with a little bit of B pencil, and you might notice that I've buffed along the AK's metalwork a little bit. That's nice and subtle, but it does stand out just to add a little bit more to that look. So again, thank you very much to Steffan for letting me have these guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing those stretch goals unlock. As well to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, and all of my wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, and very importantly resin for these guys, including my gorgeous producers who are showing up on screen now. Thank you so much for your support, folks. Now, any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Blue Sky and Instagram are both linked there too. So, thank you very much for your time, one and all, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.